Batgirl issue 7. Brian Q. Miller, writing with Lee Garbett and Tim Levins on the art. Rounding out this Batgirl Rising 3-part story, which is Batgirl and Robin are racing towards Batman, who's been hunted by a series of C-list assassins. Roulette's got this whole game on. She's filming the whole thing, broadcasting it over the internet, and even offering a portion of the revenue of the DVD sales, which just kind of puts this in the... you can kind of date this a little bit. DVD sales, and back when that was relevant.
This isn't even that long ago, really. No,
I think it's just interesting, because this is... Interestingly, 2009, when this came out, I had just, a year before, went HD and was on the Blu-rays at that point. But I think it's notable that now you would never sell someone on you'll get a cut of the DVD sales, because DVD sales are relatively small now.
It's bizarre. It's only 10 years, and that's just tech. Irrelevant, yeah. And just for the record, it's just Lee Garbett on this issue.
DC Wiki told me else.
I am looking at the credits page right now.
Well, go and fix DC Wiki's page then. Correct this.
Someone should, do you know what? Someone who listens to our stuff, the amount of times we'll go, DC Wiki's wrong. One of our listeners should take it upon themselves to go and actually make those corrections.
Actually, to be fair, to credit to DC Wiki, this is the first time I think they've been wrong. It's actually Comixology who has it wrong a lot, which is not user submitted. So
no, Comixology are much worse for that than they really should be.
No, and it's always understandable mistakes. So you can always tell it's who was supposed to be on it before it changed, or it was whoever was on the previous issue and they've just not changed it. It's always understandable what they've done, but it happens often enough.
And I think the problem is they don't correct it.
No. So yeah, they're racing off to save Dick Bats. And Damien wants nothing to do with Batgirl, of course, and he runs to get a bike out of one of the storage places. And because of this, Babs is like, hey, alright, I've got something for a rainy day. Go to underneath my place into the garage. And we get this weird bat pod bike thing.
I'm going to put out here now. I hate the design of this thing. I think it's ugly as shit. It distracts me the entire time that I'm reading this. She's lying forward inside that pod, having to crane her neck up to see the road, I'm assuming. What? This is terrible. I
don't hate it. Do you know what this is inspired by? It's inspired by the Tumbler, because when he's firing the weapons in the Tumbler in the Bat movies, it sort of puts them down, because it happens to Gordon as well, where they go into this lying position where they're firing the weapons. I think this is kind of meant to be just that idea on its own.
Yeah, see, I get it in that context where that's just, okay, weapons mode, so it shifts, right? It's like... I don't know. It's like in the Millennium Falcon, where they've got the shooting turrets down the ladders, right? It's kind of like separating those departments in that way. Whereas this here is just, you're supposed to be driving like that. It's terrible.
Well, I think to be fair, in the Tumbler, essentially what he goes into, you don't realize it till the second movie, but what he's getting into is the Batpod position. So I feel like the only real mistake here from a usability standpoint is that it's just not. They've not got an arc enough in it where it's clear that she's on more of just a sort of low angle seat as opposed to lying on her stomach is what it looks like.
I think the problem is with the bike version of the Tumbler, he can still sit up. He leans forward, but he's very clearly on a bike and still sitting. Whereas this physically looks like she's laying down inside the pod. Is more the
I didn't
visual.
have the big issue with. I mean, I don't necessarily love it, but it didn't bother me.
I actively hate it every time it was on screen. It was ugly.
Yeah. So, because we've got these two in play, Roulette's up in the ante and open the bet and back up, all that jazz. That line comes later, but it cuts back to her a couple of times and she sort of reacts to what's going on. Maybe even adds bounties on their heads as well, just to make things interesting. But they finally kind of agree a little bit when they get there. Batman's facing off against Dr. Phosphorus, who tries to give him cancer. There's a gorgeous page of him swinging away from an explosion.
It's great.
But they agree to sort of form a plan together. But this is when the others come in. Roxy, who's on the little rockets flying around, comes in. So Babs there. Steph launches herself. This thing has an eject system where it kind of arcs up and launches her out. So she lands on the rocket, the Roxy rocket, and that's where the front cover comes from. That said, though, I think the actual page in the issue looks much better than the front cover, just because the coloring on the front cover is very kind of washed out in comparison. I'm likely to be in the minority here because I'm pretty sure Connor loves the artist who did the cover.
I think it's interesting because it's a Noto cover. Like I think all of this series has been so far. I don't know. I can't remember if that stopped at some point. It's probably my least favorite Noto.
Oh, it definitely stops because I'm pretty sure the first Sejic covers that I know of are later on.
Oh, are they on this series? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't remember. It's been a while.
If it's not Sejic, it's someone like Sejic because they're very Sejic-esque. But definitely not Noto, I guess is the point. But and Robin comes in and rides the bike into Phosphorus when he's got Batman, and then eventually Steph kind of swoops in the Roxy rocket to hit Phosphorus as well. So they actually work together. They formed this little plan, and then the duplicate guy, what was his name? I can't remember.
Oh god, I'm blanking
Riot.
as well.
It's Riot. But they're fighting Riot, and Damien's like, hey, if it's not the original Riot, technically I'm not killing anyone.
It doesn't count as maiming, right?
Yeah, it's not lethal if I'm killing the non-originals. And Dick's like, yeah, it sounds like a plan. Actually, not Steph. Sorry, Steph says it sounds like a plan. And Steph's like sort of carting Dick off to the side, and yeah, so she's like, okay.
And he pays her a compliment, says, "Nice work."
Yeah, so I need to go back and help him. So she goes back and helps Damien in the fight. Roulette tries to run off, but of course the entire team shows up to stop her. You got Dick, Robin, and Batgirl all as a unit. But of course they're still bickering, even though they're winning, even though they're standing there triumphantly. They're still bickering because Damien
he's trying to do the one-liners.
He tries to pull a one-liner, and Steph is like, "Don't be lame." So
I love Dick there being like, "Shush, he's learning."
Yeah,
let him try.
It cuts to them, the two kids essentially, Steph and Damien, are up just sort of eating pizza or whatever it is. No, waffles. Sorry, of course it's waffles.
Of course it is. I was going to say, why would you go to pizza? This is Steph.
Yeah, I just because they're not at Steph's place. They're in the cave, right?
But that's how important waffles are to Steph. There are waffles everywhere.
I guess she keeps waffles in one of the pouches. She's got a lot of pouches on the belt. But
Babs has said something to Alfred.
Yes, but they're sort of like, oh, they're down there talking about us, right? And it's like, yeah, and then like Dick and Babs are like, yeah, they know that we're talking about them, and you know, it's kind of them agreeing. There's even a joke at the end where there's like, okay, so what? You get Alfred on alternating weekends, like, you know, how do we sort this? But she kind of admits that this is equally for her as it is for Steph. Like, Steph needs to do this and she needs to do this. This is something that's important to her. So, you know, they kind of agree and see eye to eye. So, I mean, this story was always going to be about Dick accepting that Steph was going to be the new Batgirl and be on the Bat family and be a sanctioned part of the family, I suppose, is the best way to put it. Just in the same way that Batgirl Year One, which we'll do at some point, no doubt, with Babsy's sort of origin in the world. Not obviously our first appearance, that's way before that, but the idea being that by the end it's all about Batman accepting her into being a crime fighter and being a part of the Gotham and not stopping her and, you know, being an actual ally. So it makes a lot of sense for it to end that way. There's a little twist here at the end where the guy that she was kind of flirting with seems to be gay. That's kind of her little... She's sort of like watching, she's kind of like annoyed at first because he seems to be back with the girl that he was with, but then he also hugs the guy and she's like, oh, well, okay then.
Yeah, because the guy's there waiting, being like, you know, don't disappear on me again.
Yeah. So it's kind of a little jokey ending to just kind of because the romance side of that was very minor and it was just kind of there to set up what the plot was. So it's just a nice little capper on it to sort of like...
She basically had a crush for 10 minutes.
Yeah, write it off. And it's just like, yeah, that Batgirl, I'm in the city, and she rides off on her bike. With a signal behind her. So it's very much the origin arc. I think it's interesting that we get a 2-issue arc of Babs accepting her, and then... Or sorry, a 3-issue arc of Babs accepting her, and then a 3-issue arc of just the greater Bat family accepting her. So she's finally come. So I like that it kind of takes the origin and splits it into two.
It is, because it's very much, you know, your standard 6-issue arc for an origin, right? And this still functions as that. It's just it does it in 2 parts.
Mm-hmm. Which I think works really well in the context. The idea that Babs gets first dibs on accepting a new Batgirl, like she's the first line of not defense.
Gotta give her approval first.
She has to be first because it's more personal to her. and she's obviously going to be more prominent in the book as well. Whereas Batman and Damian will, they'll fade away to the background now for a while. And although we have a Red Robin crossover next, I believe,
which only makes sense given that it's Steph.
Yeah. So no, it should be good. Honestly, this issue really strong. I mean, obviously you hit the bike design, but
I'm knocking off a full point for the bike design. I'm telling you now, 'cause every time it showed up, it distracted me.
For sure. Well, she's got it in the next issue as well, so you're just going to have to accept it going forward.
I will always knock off a point if it's as heavily utilized as this.
Bloody hell. No, I mean, obviously the art's really good. There were some fantastic action pages. Everything with Dick and Phosphorus, the jumping through the air, all that stuff was solid. And I mean, it's a very straightforward issue actually, because it is just very much them running and taking on all the villains and getting to Batman. It's exactly kind of what the last issue promised, with very little twist or any kind of swerve. But that's okay, because it plays off simple. It wasn't like it was trying to stretch it out to another 2 or 3 issues to be a longer arc or anything like that. So
you can get away with having an issue as simple as this when you have really strong dialogue between your characters.
Yeah, and you've also spent 2 issues setting it up, and this is the payoff. It's not the build to the next thing, right? So it's very much the capper on what this arc has been. So no, it flows really well. It's fun to read. The art looks gorgeous. Character stuff is really strong. Not my favorite issue of the run so far by any means. If anything, I think the last issue, all the stuff with Damian last issue, probably puts the issue a little bit higher than this one. But I'm still quite happy to give this an 8.5.
I'm going to give it just a straight 7. Which is interesting that even if I didn't dislike the design of the bike so much, we still wouldn't have lined up perfectly, which seems to be the trend this week for whatever reason.